Alrighty, so you notice the setting of this video is a little different than usual, and that's because I am actually doing this video from another room because I got back home and found out there was a huge ant trail that was in my desk, and apparently I think I left some of those cookie crumbs on the desk. And you know how those cookie crumbs can attract ants? Yeah, it basically attracts ants, and it has this huge ant trail that was going through my desk, so I had to grab those anti-ant chemical. And even though I was able to get rid of all those ants, that chemical is poisonous and it leaves a smell where there was just no way in the world I was going to do a video with that smell that is going on. And not to mention that those smell and those chemicals are kind of poisonous and not good for my health. That's why I'm doing this video in the other room instead of my usual room. But that being said, in terms of this video, we're going to look at all 14 games that's going to be happening in match week number, I believe it's now 30. Yeah, it's now match week 30. We're now down to the last month of the season where it's pretty much crunch time for a lot of teams. Now, there's only going to be one game that's going to be happening on Friday, which, you know, it is today. And in some way, I'm actually doing this video a little bit on a short note. This because this game between Montreal versus Columbus is going to happen in just a bit. But in terms of the other games, we have 13 games that's going to be happening on Saturday and no games that's going to be happening on Sunday. And I think the reason why there's going to be no games on Sunday is because we do have some midweek action. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably going to have to split the review into two parts, because there's no way I'm going to do what I did last week in terms of looking at the 13 games in the weekends action, where I basically just did it all at the same time. But let us actually look at the first game, and like I said, this is a bit of a short notice, and by the time when I finish recording this video, most likely I am going to, or most likely this game is going to happen. And that, of course, is Montreal versus Columbus, which will start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. All-time meeting, the Crew have a 12-4-10 record over Montreal. And in terms of the remaining games for Montreal, they got Chicago at home before they play New England on the road, DC United at home, and they finished their decision day match with Inter Miami. Now for Columbus, they got Inter Miami on the road for their next game. Then they got the Timbers at home. Then they got the New York Red Bulls at home before going on the road against Charlotte and going on the road against Orlando City to finish off the season. And for the Crew, you know, they're at a spot where, while they are in a comfortable spot in terms of making the playoffs, they're not at that point where they're automatically guaranteed to make it to the playoffs. I mean, they're still within a range where they're only a couple of points above the red line, where they need to continue to get resort. And while this is not going to be an easy resort, because they're playing against one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, Montreal this season at home has been kind of hit and miss at times. And knowing the fact that the Crew, believe it or not, has had a good record on the road this season. Well, I wouldn't say good, but more of a respectable record, and definitely better than what we've seen in the past couple of seasons. There could be a chance that the Crew can pull off an upset in this one, but we'll see whether or not if that is going to be the case. But now moving on, in the next one, we got Charlotte versus NYCFC. Charlotte with a 10-2-17 record, while NYCFC have a 13-7-10 record. As I mentioned, this is the first of 13 games that's going to be happening on Saturday, and it's an early one too. 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 1:08 p.m. local time. All-time meeting, there's only one prior meeting, which, believe it or not, Charlotte actually won that meeting. They won 3-1 against NYCFC on the road for only their second road win in their franchise history. And the remaining game for them, they got Chicago on the road, the Union at home, Columbus at home, and they finish off their inaugural year with the New York Red Bulls on the road. Now for NYCFC, this is actually kind of incorrect. They don't actually play Atlanta next. I kind of messed up in terms of the order. Talk about the remaining games. Their next game, I believe, is actually the Derby, which is against the New York Red Bulls at home before they play against Orlando City. And then the final game this season, they, of course, will be playing against Atlanta United. So, yeah, you know, coming into this game, you know, I kind of want to say it's a desperation derby, but at the same time, you know, for Charlotte, I know they're still in a playoff hunt, but, you know, when you look at how far they have fallen behind in the playoff race and how they still have some really tough games remaining this season, I'm pretty sure that they're not going to make the playoffs, which is okay, because I think this first season for Charlotte has considered to be a decent first season. And, you know, I mentioned with all the dramas that was going on this year, I think Charlotte definitely kind of overachieve a little bit, considering everybody thought that this was going to be a team that's going to finish FC Cincinnati level in their expansion year, which is winning the wooden spoon. But for NYCFC, boy, they need a win desperately, because this team, you know, as I said, any team that might get a first round exit, that most likely is going to be the case, has to be NYCFC, because ever since Tati Castellanos left this team has simply fallen apart. And, you know, if you're heading to the playoffs cold and you're going for a losing streak, it is not a big surprise that you're not going to do well in the playoffs. And unless if NYCFC don't turn it around like they did last season, because I mentioned last season they kind of gone through this bad run in the last couple of games, and everybody thought that they were going to be a first round exit, and then they end up winning MLS Cup. If they don't turn things around, then yeah, it could be a first round exit, and it starts in this game against a Charlotte team that, you know, what kind of killed their playoff chances is because of their bad home form in the last couple of games. They have not done well at home compared to what they did in the beginning of the year. And Bank of America Stadium definitely isn't as much of a fortress as we'd seen in the previous game. Though that being said, moving on in the next one, we got Nashville SC versus the LA Galaxy, which will start at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 2:50 local time, which means that unfortunately this game is going to be on Twitter, but hopefully this is one of the last time that we're going to have Twitter game. In fact, I don't think there's going to be a lot of Twitter game left this season, and as I mentioned, with Apple TV taking charge of the broadcast next year, let's just hope we don't have to deal with this again as we've been dealing with the past couple of seasons. But this is an interesting matchup, because Nashville, they're 12-9-9 and have really been on a hot form ever since Dax McCarty decided to rally the troop and call out the fact that the team was underachieving, versus a Galaxy team that is still below the red line, though they still do control their own destiny in a way where, you know, even though they're 3 points behind, they do have 2 games in hand over the Portland Timbers. But the last game was just an absolute gut punch. And, you know, Chicharito, I mean, I know it's been over a week now, but I'm pretty sure Galaxy fans too have not forgiven Chicharito of being super cute there from the spot trying to do a Panenka, and it did not work whatsoever. And that, as I said, you know, that moment could potentially cost the Galaxy chances even to make the playoffs, even if they're still control their own destiny. But they do have an 11-6-11 record. All-time meeting, there's only one prior meeting, which the Galaxy was able to win that only meeting. And then the remaining game for Nashville, well, it's kind of a tough schedule for the remaining season. They got Austin on the road. Then they got an easy game against the Houston Dynamo, but they finished the season against the best team in the league, or at least one of the best team in the league, that is LAFC, and the team that is at the top of the Western Conference. Whereas for the Galaxy, you know, they do have a relatively easy schedule to finish the season. They got Vancouver on the road, then they got Colorado at home. Then they go on the road to play against the Quakes in a game that should have happened back in June, but because we had that electrical failure happen at Stamford Stadium, that's why the game was pushed back to mid-September. But they do have RSL at home, which is probably the toughest game, though it's definitely not as tough as they have to go on the road against the Houston Dynamo. And I know what you're thinking. How is playing Houston is a tough game? Yeah, you have not seen how the Galaxy had trouble with the Dynamo, and that I'm pretty sure all Galaxy fans was dreading the fact that they should not be waiting for the last day to confirm their playoff chances, because they're going to be playing against Houston, and that team, I swear, they have played against them a lot during decision day, and most of the time, if not all the time, it has ended in heartbreak. So yeah, you know, for the Galaxy, even though when you look at, they do have an easy schedule to finish off the season, there's definitely some tricky game too, and especially, you know, even some easy opponent like the Quakes on the road. That game is at Stamford Stadium, and that place is a house of horror for the Galaxy, and you know the Quakes are going to be really up for it, and you know they want nothing more to spoil their rival chances, of course, making the playoffs. And yeah, this is not as an easy schedule as what Galaxy fans would feel like, even though a lot of the teams that they're going to be facing are below the red line. But first, they need to get a result in this game against Nashville, because like I said, Nashville is just red hot right now. They're probably in the best form of the season, and right on time in terms of them potentially bringing that hot form into the playoffs too. But that being said, moving on in the next one, we got the New York Red Bulls versus New England, which will start at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 6:08 p.m. local time. The Red Bulls have a 13-8-9 record, while New England 9-11-9. An all-time meeting, the Revs have a 41-19-31 record over the Red Bulls. But the remaining games for the Red Bulls, they got the derby against NYCFC on the road. Then they have to play against Columbus, and they finish the season on decision day against Charlotte FC. For New England, they got Houston on the road, Montreal at home, Atlanta at home, and they finish off the season on the road against the Chicago Fire. And I'm interested to see how this game will turn out, because you know both of these teams do not like each other, and that there should be some bad blood that could potentially happen in this one. But most importantly, you know, this is important for New England too, where, you know, this is a team that I believe now they find themselves below the red line again, and that, you know, they need to find a way to try to get themselves back above the... Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I don't think they're... Are they below the red line right now? Oh, I got to check the standings again. But either way, you know, they're at a point where they're in those playoff bubble, and that, you know, if they want to get free points to improve their playoff chances, this is definitely the one to do so, because the Red Bulls this season, you know, at home, that's been a problem, and we'll see whether if it's going to be a problem again in this game against New England. But moving on, we got Atlanta United versus Toronto FC, and you talk about a game that is not only a playoff six-pointer, but this is the absolute definition of a desperation derby, because both of these teams are literally on the tail end of the playoff race, and both of these teams that are maybe have some big expectation heading in the beginning of the season and have definitely fit to do so. You just had a feeling that, you know, with both of these teams facing up each other, you know that one of these teams desperately need 3 points to keep hope of their fringe playoff hope, because Toronto 9-7-14, I believe they're 4 points back, while Atlanta 8-9-12, I believe they're 5 points back of the playoff line. As this game will start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. And in terms of the all-time meeting, it's a 5-4-3 record in favor of Toronto. But for the remaining game for Atlanta, they have to go on the road to face against their hated southern rival, that is Orlando City. Then they play against the Union at home before going on the road against New England, and then finish at home against NYCFC. Yeah, that is a murderous road record or murderous road games to finish off the season. And it's not the same. Well, it's pretty much the same for Toronto too. They have to go on the road to play against Orlando. Then they play at home against Inter Miami before finishing all the season on the road against the Philadelphia Union. And that, yeah, you know, I think even if one of these teams get the big victory, I don't know if it's going to be enough for either of these teams to make that late playoff push, because like I said, the remaining games for both of these teams are very tough. But let's just say that, you know, I'm pretty sure both of these head coaches are still not believing that their team is done in the playoff hunt, and that's why both of these head coaches, they know that they desperately need 3 points if they want to onto their playoff hope, because whoever loses this game, I think their season is pretty much done. It's simple as that. So yeah, we'll see who can potentially win the ultimate desperation derby game and the ultimate playoff six-pointer that we had in this match week. But that being said, moving on in the next one, we got FC Cincinnati versus the San Jose Earthquakes, as this game will also start at the same time. In fact, this is one of 3 games that starts at the same time, so I won't mention the kickoff again, especially the next game. But the Quakes 7-9-12, while Cincinnati 9-12-8. And in terms of the all-time meeting, there's only one prior meeting between both of these teams, and the Quakes were able to win that one prior meeting. But the remaining games for FC Cincinnati, they got RSL on the road, then Seattle on the road, then they get Chicago at home before they go on the road to face DC. So that's not an easy schedule, especially the next 2 games, though. You know, this team, just like their interstate rival Columbus, seems to be doing much better on the road this season than they do at home. For the Quakes, they got Colorado on the road, then they got Dallas at home, then they got the Galaxy at home, Minnesota at home before finish off the season against the Seattle Sounders. And, you know, well, the Quakes, I've talked about, they've been done for a while now. Their remaining game schedule, I'm very interested to see how it's going to end up, because, you know, I feel like, even though I know the Quakes are pretty much eliminated from the playoffs, even though I know they're not officially eliminated, but these next couple of games, they have a chance to play some spoiler, especially with the way that, you know, all the teams that they're about to face, well, pretty much all but the next game that they're going to face, are all teams that are just kind of fighting for playoff chances, because I know Colorado probably seems like they're done in terms of where they are in the standings. But these next couple of teams that they're faced are either playoff or teams that are fighting for the playoffs, or teams that is fighting for home field advantage. So they can definitely play spoiler in these next game. And the same goes with this one too, facing against a Cincinnati team that are in the mix of the playoff position. In fact, they're the team that a lot of teams below them are trying to chase for those playoffs. The Quakes can definitely play some spoiler in this game, and we'll see whether they can do so against a Cincinnati team that that they're looking to try to get 3 points. And then this was the game that they basically punted, or in the midweek they kind of punted that game away so that they can get all 3 points in this one. And as a Minnesota United fans, I gotta warn Cincinnati fans, be careful what they wish for. The fact that they decided to punt that game against NYCFC, though I will say that at least they're probably more happier that they at least got a point out of that game, when that was a game where any point was going to be happy. But the reason why I say I warned them is because, it doesn't always turn out to be well, and especially against the Quakes team that, again, I talked about before, when you do face against teams that are lowly in the standings and have nothing to lose, those are some of the most dangerous teams to face, because the Quakes have nothing to lose. Like, if they lose badly in this game, I could care less, because I know their season is pretty much done. But that they're not going to go down easily. They're going to pretend that they're still fighting for the playoffs, and that's something that Cincinnati's got to make sure that that's the case and not easily overlook this Quakes team. But that being said, moving on in the next one, we got the Philly Union versus Orlando City. So the Union 17-9-4 and are chasing down LAFC for that Supporter Shield standings. In fact, they're actually tied with LAFC in terms of that spot. They play against Orlando City, and for Orlando, this is definitely tough for them, because they of course got that US Open Cup win, a historic win on their franchise history, and the reward is playing against the best team on the road. I mean, there's an old saying, there's got to be payment that needs to be made after you did something historic, and I guess this is probably the payment that Orlando City is going to have to do, facing against the best team in the league. All-time meeting, the Union have a 7-5-5 record over Orlando, and the remaining games for the Union, they got at Atlanta, at Charlotte in their next 2 games, and they finished the season against Toronto FC at home. For Orlando, they play Atlanta at home, play Toronto FC at home, then they go on the road to play against NYCFC, and then go on the road to face against Inter Miami, and they finish the season against the Columbus Crew. Though, again, this is a game where, for Orlando, I think they know that this might be a game that they might not get anything out of it, because, it's tough to try to recover from kind of a bit of a trophy hangover after winning their first trophy in their franchise history in the last game against Sacramento, and just solely now focus on playing against the best team in the league. But you never know, maybe Orlando could cause another upset, though. Again, this is most likely the one that I would say that if there is a heavy favorite that most likely is going to get the win, this is definitely one of those. And that seems like the Union, who is just basically steamrolling everybody in these past couple of months or so, you would think the Union should easily get a win in this one. I would think that's the case, but then, there's also that MLS thing, and there's also that reason why I don't want to say that it's an automatic free points, because sometimes when I say that, it's going to backfire big time, and now I have to kind of apologize to the team that I said that they're going to get an automatic win when they did not do so. Though, that being said, moving on in the next match, we got Chicago versus Inter Miami. That will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:08 p.m. local time. Miami has a 10-6-2 record, while for Chicago, 8-8-3 is their record, as this game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:08 p.m. local time. All-time meeting, it's a exactly 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss in terms of the all-time, as this is only the 4th meeting between both of these teams. And for the Fire, they got Montreal on the road, Charlotte at home, FC Cincinnati on the road, and New England at home. And even though, the Fire is one of those teams that is not officially eliminated, you just kind of feel like they are, with the way that they have pretty much fall apart in these past month or so, in a way where it seems like it's see you next season for this Fire team. But that cannot be said about Inter Miami, because they're trying to get themselves back above the red line. But when you look at the remaining schedule, it is a little bit tricky because they go on the road against Columbus, then go on the road against DC, then go on the road again to TFC before finish the season against Orlando and Montreal. And knowing the fact that Inter Miami has really struggled this season on the road, yeah, you just gotta have a feeling that in these next couple of games, couple of games could really determine whether they make it to the playoffs or not. And it's harsh to say that for a team that hasn't done well on the road, but you know, if you want to make it to the playoffs, it's never an easy road. And for Miami, if they want to make it to the playoffs this season, they have to do it the hard way. And you talk about a time when they can desperately need a home win. This is definitely the most doable one against a Fire team that, like I said, they have not played well in these past month or so, and we'll see whether or not if Inter Miami can get that big victory. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 6 remaining games that's going to be happening in terms of match week number 30. So moving on in the next match, we got Seattle versus Austin FC, which will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 5:08 p.m. local time. The Sounders with an 11-3-5 record, while Austin 15-6-6 is the record. And in terms of the all-time meeting, it's the Sounders with a 1-2-0 record over Austin FC. And the remaining games for the Sounders, they got the forgotten Cascadia Derby against the Vancouver Whitecaps on the road before finish the season versus FC Cincinnati at Sporting KC, and then they play the San Jose Earthquakes to finish their decision day game. While for Austin FC, they play RSL at home, play Nashville at home, on the road against the Vancouver Whitecaps before finish the season against the Colorado Rapids. Now, you know, for Austin, I feel like, you know, for the remaining part of the season, they kind of don't really have anything to fight for because we know that they're most likely going to finish as the second seed, and unless if somebody from third place can make a dramatic run, this team looks like it's going to finish second. But for the Seattle Sounders, they have everything to play for because, like I said, you know, that game against the Houston Dynamo in a must-win game like that, they did exactly that because of an unthinkable low mark that happened in that game where Nuhu finally decided that he's going to be a goal scorer in this league. And, you know, we'll see whether that remarkable moment can spark this Sounders team, and that it's also kind of another game where they needs to win because, you know, I know they're playing against Austin. Austin is one of the best teams in the league, but, you know, at the same time, you know, if they want to make it to the playoffs, and that I still believe there's a chance that this team can make it to the playoffs, but, you know, they need to, of course, win these games, and that, again, they're 6 points behind, oh god, I forgot who was in that 7th position in the West for a second. Oh god, just kind of having a brain fart moment to forget who is in this. Oh, the Portland Timbers in that 7th position. Ironic the fact that their rival is now in that 7th position, but you know they're gonna have to hope to get the win in this and hope that the Timbers can drop some points down the stretch so that they can get themselves into the playoffs as a 7 or even as a 6 seed. But that being said, moving on in the next one, we got FC Dallas versus LAFC. So this game will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. Dallas has a 12-10-8 record, while LAFC have a 19-3-7 record. But in terms of the all-time meeting, LAFC have a 4-2-1 record over FC Dallas. And for the remaining game of the season for Dallas, it's kind of relatively easy. They go on the road to play against the Quakes before go on the road against Colorado, and they finish the season against Sporting KC. Whereas for LAFC, they still have to go on the road to play against Minnesota. Then they finish at home again. Well, they don't finish at home, but they play Houston at home. Then go on the road against the Timbers, and then play against Nashville SC. And again, you know, as much as I know LAFC would definitely wants to fight for the Supporters Shield and are trying to hold off the Philadelphia Union for that trophy, just wonder, will LAFC be happy to just think about the playoffs and maybe rest some guys for the playoffs? I mean, that's something that, you know, this team has been going for, where, you know, it would be nice for them to win the Supporters Shield, but, you know, they already won it before. Their goal is trying to win MLS Cup, and we'll see whether resting some guys maybe help that cause. Though, you know, LAFC fans will probably not be happy with that, because the last time they tried to rest some guys, oh boy, it did not end well. So we'll see whether this is going to be one of those games too. Though, again, you know, against the Dallas team, if you decide to rest guys, yeah, Dallas are looking to trying to take advantage, because they're another team that's trying to hold off a couple of teams in terms of the home field advantage, because between third all the way down to sixth right now, there's a battle right now for not just the playoff spot, but also trying to get those home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. But with that being said, moving on in the next game, we got the Houston Dynamo versus Sporting KC, as this game will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. The Dynamo 8-5-16, while Sporting KC 8-6-15. All-time meaning, it's a 2014-17 record that the Dynamo has over Sporting KC, but the remaining games for the Dynamo, they got New England at home before going on the road against LAFC, and then go on the road against Nashville. And they finished the season against the LA Galaxy, whereas for Sporting KC, they got DC United at home, Minnesota at home, and then they, of course, I wrote this wrong here. They don't play themselves again. And then, of course, they finished the season at FC Dallas. So it's a relatively easy schedule, depending on how you look. Well, actually, I wouldn't say it's an easy schedule, but, you know, basically what I'm trying to say is that if you want to talk about the most meaningless match of this week, this is basically the one, because there's really nothing to fight for either of these teams. These teams are pretty much in see you next season mode, but I'm pretty sure both of these teams want to finish their season strong, and especially for the Houston Dynamo, they want to see whether they can maybe get some head coaching boost, or in this case an interim head coach boost, after Paulo Nakamura was let go in the last game. Though that being said, moving on in the next match, in a game where, again, you know, it might be a desperation derby, but at the same time, it feels like both of these teams maybe are just way too out of the playoffs in terms of having a chance to make it. And that, of course, is the Colorado Rapids versus Vancouver, as this game will start at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:41 p.m. local time. Colorado 8, 9, and 12, while Vancouver 9, 7, and 13. In terms of the all-time meeting, it's pretty close, 11, 6, and 10 in favor of the Rapids. Remaining game for the Rapids, they got San Jose at home before they play against the Galaxy. Then they play against FC Dallas at home before they play on the road. And again, oh my God, I did it again. I don't know why I keep basically putting the same team there. Remember, I did the board last night relatively late, so I might have made some mistake in terms of that. But for Vancouver, they got the Galaxy at home, Seattle at home, Austin FC at home before they finish the season on the road against Minnesota United on decision day. And like I said, you know, I think this is a game where it kind of maybe is just a game where if one of these teams win, they keep their faint playoff hope. But whoever loses this game, yeah, they're pretty much confirmed being done in the season. And that, you know, both of these teams, you know, I think these last couple of games where they've gone on a bit of a losing run is pretty much the reason why they're so far out of the playoffs. But we'll see whether who can get that desperate win to maybe keep their small hope of making the playoffs. But again, you know, both of these teams, I think maybe it's too far out, and that maybe this is just like the game between Houston versus Sporting KC, that it's kind of meaningless. Though that being said, moving on in the next match, we got RSL versus DC United. So this game will also start at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is going to be a little bit earlier, 7:38 p.m. local time. RSL 11, 7, and 9 this season, while DC 7, 5, and 17. All-time meeting, it's a 9, 5, and 9 record for both teams, so it's pretty much even. 9 wins apiece for both of these teams, 5 draws. Remaining game for RSL, they have to go on the road against Austin before playing at home against Cincinnati. Then they go on the road against the Galaxy before finishing the season at home against the Portland Timbers. For DC, they have to go on the road to play Sporting KC next, but then they play against Inter Miami. Then they go on the road to play against Montreal before playing at home against FC Cincinnati. And, you know, you talked about earlier what I said about the Quakes have some team they're going to be playing that is fighting for those playoff chances, and they can be a spoiler. That could be the same case for DC. I mean, they could definitely be that spoiler team, and they kind of did well, at least in some of these recent games, but we'll see whether they can do with against an RSL team that, you know, RSL, so they definitely want to bounce back after that tough loss against LAFC, where, you know, I don't think they play badly in that game. I thought they had some decent chances in this one, but, you know, they just kind of got out quality a very good LAFC team, and that, yeah, you know, we'll see whether they can get a huge 3 points to really get themselves back in a spot where they can be back in the top 4, because they've been spending that a lot, but now they've dropped themselves all the way to 6th place in the Western Conference. But that being said, moving on, in the next match, we finish off the game with the Portland Timbers versus Minnesota United, as this game will start at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:08 p.m. local time. The Timbers 10-2-8, while Minnesota 13-5-11. All-time meeting, the Loons does have the edge over the Timbers, 7-2-3. And the remaining games for the Timbers, they play on the road against Columbus. Then they play at home against LAFC, and then they finish the season on the road against RSL. Yeah, that is not an easy schedule for them to trying to hold off the Galaxy and well, not a lot, but some teams that is below the red line, and a team that is also just north of them in the Cascadia region. For Minnesota, they also have a very tough schedule. Well, actually, they don't have a tough schedule, but they do have some very tricky teams that they have to play. You know, the next game at home against LAFC. Then they go on the road against Sporting KC. And again, you know, that might be an easy game for Minnesota until you realize that this team cannot win against Sporting KC on the road. Then they go on the road against a San Jose Earthquakes team that, as I said, the Quakes, they're a team that are trying to play spoiler. And then they finish the season against the Vancouver Whitecaps, and knowing the fact that the Loons also will potentially not have two of their most important players in Reynoso and Fragapane, and also pretty much won't have a competent attack in this game. Oh boy, this is going to be like that game against RSL, isn't it? And that this shouldn't be a throwaway game, because again, you know, after that big loss that they had against Dallas and then another loss against RSL, that was a throwaway game. Now this team find themselves in a tricky situation where, you know, they're not that far from actually being above the red line, and with these tricky games that's going on, it can easily turn for this team. It can turn for its worst for a team where it looked like a couple of weeks ago they were just fighting for home field advantage, and now I won't be surprised as we get into the last couple of games, this team might be fighting for their playoff life, because if there's one thing I know about Minnesota, and if there's one thing I know about their sports, yeah, they seem to always find ways to collapse late in the season, and let's just hope for the Loons that is not going to be the case. But like I said, injuries has been a problem, and also suspension has been a problem too for this team. And in this game where they basically have no attack against a red-hot Portland team, yeah, this might not end well for the Loons, even if they have a relatively good record against the Timbers. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these games that's going to be happening in just a bit, and also tomorrow. But either way, let me know in the comments below, and make sure you also leave your prediction for all 14 of these games. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.